And we're live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Inspired Chats. I'm Carl Andrews. This is Salva Marsden-Shreve, and this is Ryan Smith. Together, we make up the Inspired Chats, Inspired and Wellbeing team for Inspired Fitness Academy. This week, so over the past 13 weeks, we have been discussing a number of different topics all around mental health and our responses to the whole COVID situation and what's been going on around there and how it's been making us feel. And this week, we're going to take a slightly different tack. We're going to talk about the situation rather than the mental health side of things. And we're going to talk about the situation of coming out of lockdown and what it means to us and how we feel about the whole situation. So I'll start off by throwing my two penneth worth in. So last week we had a barbecue and it was absolutely freezing. And as it got dark, we made our guests sit in the garden because we just didn't know whether we were allowed to invite them in the house or not. And I was sat wearing my winter football coat, hat and gloves in the middle of July. It was ridiculous. And that, in my mind, is anxiety of not knowing what to do in the situation. So, hey guys, am I the only one feeling this?
No, not at all.
So how do you feel?
Sarah, do you want
to? Well, I do sometimes struggle as to what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, because I want to respect the guidelines, not just for myself, but for other people. Now, I've officially said that I will physically work with clients from today with, mask if I need to, gloves, that sort of thing, 1 to 2 meter distancing and all that sort of thing. But I do feel a kind of uncertainty, really, because I want to get back involved with my clients, but I also respect them and I respect myself. So I've just decided that I'm just going to follow the guidelines and take these precautions. But yeah, it does fill you with a little bit of anxiety, and sometimes you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, but you can only do the best that you can and go with that, because everybody likes to make judgments about everybody else. That's human nature, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly. And, with everybody's in different situations, and you don't know what's going on in different houses with different people, whether you're shielding, non-shielding, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, there is a bit of uncertainty. There is a little bit of, oh, good, we're finally moving forward slowly and carefully. But wanting to be sure about things, because I could never forgive myself if I thought that I'd passed on some sort of germ to somebody else. Do you know what I mean? And I think that makes me feel what makes me feel quite anxious.
So, I mean, for me, it's been more, I mean, from the beginning of what was the UK lockdown, I'd slowly started to watch it unfold in Italy, and then again in France, and then obviously rushing back home from France, coming back here. 13 weeks is, it's been up and down. And then, I mean, I shut my business down back in October of last year. So in a way, I was kind of ahead of my time, which, with the way I dress and everything, it's just one of them things, always been ahead of the time. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
I got it.
Yeah, good. No, and what's really annoyed me is, although I'm not willing to open my business back up yet, I've put things in place when I'm ready and when I want to, not because the government says I can. It's when I want to, when I'm happy for it to. But what's really done my head in And it has really affected. I know there's industries out there that's affected, but we've been classed as sports massage therapists, sports therapists, remedial therapists. We've built, and I'm not digging here, but we've been put in the bracket of beauticians, and all that sort of thing. But what has really riled me is you look at physiotherapists, osteopaths, chiropractors who use similar techniques, who are in similar sort of situations, are allowed to practice, but we're not. Right? So for me, that's been what's frustrating. But then we've also been classed as massage parlours and things like that. So I have all that going on, and I'm getting frustrated. I've wrote to the MP, the governing bodies have wrote to the MPs, you know, and central government, and we've just been told, well, you're not really that important, are you? And it's just like, well, we are, because we can save the NHS millions between the industry. And I'm watching businesses shut down, and I'm watching friends that have, you know, watched their careers and their practices develop. I'm watching them all shut down around me, and here's me thinking, I'm in a situation where I've got a job that's keeping me stable. I'm in a situation where I know when I want to, I have a new gym that I'm going to be attached to. And then I'm looking at, you know, I'm in a quite privileged position where if I don't want to go out and practice, I'm not going to. But there's people in my industry that are saying, if we don't open tomorrow, that's us gone. And that for me, that's what I'm finding frustrating. I mean, me going around to somebody's house, sitting in the garden and whatnot, would you believe it, but I'm not a very sociable person. I'm, you know, I'd quite happily stay at home and things like that. And so that's not really what's bothering me. What's bothering me is the way the industry's been treated. And I'm sure there's other industries out there in a similar sort of boat that's just thinking, well, you can let people go out and have like they did at the weekend, get absolutely trolleyed, 4 pubs being shut down over in Mansfield, people congregating like that. But in a clinical setting where we can control things and whatnot, and you're not letting us do it. And that's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
I can't understand the issue with how businesses are being allowed to. It's the unknown that's causing me issues. It's the unknown of whether you can or you can't do certain things. I see businesses, friends' businesses, that these are people that I care about, that are closing their business doors for the last time, because they're getting conflicting information about whether they can trade or not trade. And it goes back to little things like, I want to give my mum a hug, and I've not been able to. I've seen her a few times in the garden, and it's the old elbow bump. Yeah, mum. Yeah, I love you. It gets you down.
To do that. Yeah, it is. And my mum has bubbled up with my sister, because my mum is 70 plus and lives alone because my dad died a few years ago. My sister is a single parent with a younger child, so they've bubbled up together. So they've been hugging each other while I'm in the garden, and I'm like, I want a cuddle as well. You know what I mean? So it is very different for different reasons. And yeah, the confusion and the frustration is totally understandable. And with regards to business as well, my business would be dead now if it wasn't for me going online and building a course and just trying to adapt. I mean, not all businesses can, but I just did it a different way. Otherwise, mine would have been gone.
That's the thing, it's been able to develop not only your business but personally as well. You know, I've said from the word get-go, this, although we've been further apart, this is going to have brought families closer together as well. You know, you realise, you know, for me, what's really riled me, you know, why open McDonald's up, but you won't open a gym up? You get people queuing outside McDonald's and whatnot, but you won't open a gym where it's controlled and things like that. You can control how many people are going in, and set it up all like that. It's the same as zoos and things like that. You can control where people are going. You can control how many people are going in there. You can control their movements and things. And they've not done things like that. And it's things for me like that have been really important, and they've not done it. And that's what I find frustrating.
Yeah, there's lots of different frustrations for different people, because we're all experiencing things differently, aren't we?
Yeah.
And not everything's being covered. So there are gaps for sure, that everybody's experiencing differently. Yeah. I mean, I would never have thought that this would ever happen. Anything like this would happen in my lifetime. I knew it was probably due, because we have these pandemics I think, didn't the history say it's like every 50 or 100 years or something like that? I can't remember. But I didn't think it would be in my lifetime and I would have to experience it. So it's mind-blowing.
It's
mind-blowing, it is.
Terrifying.
Sorry, Carl.
I was just saying, like, the loneliness during the day, where you're interconnected, because in my situation, I'm working online, so I've got interconnectivity with people, but my wife's at work from 8 in the morning till sort of 6 at night, and I'm not seeing anybody during them hours, and it's sending me stir crazy. And now I'm even questioning, well, what can we do? Can I go down to the pub and go and have a beer? Can I just
if
don't
you've got
know.
an app, or you book in, everything's an app, or you've got to book in and you'll have to leave your name and address. But yeah, you can. But I'm not rushing.
No, I'm not rushing. Was that you're not rushing or rushing?
Rushing.
No, right.
I'm not rushing to go into the pub.
It's as a whole. I mean, when people are starting, I mean, for me, what's not helped is you've got the government who are saying, wait for this information, and they feed it in drips and drabs, which I suppose it's to control the flow of it. But then before that is due to come out, that statement that is due, like this Thursday, there's a statement due to come out. What you're finding is the papers a few days before are saying, oh, you're going to be able to do this, and they're printing it in big bold letters saying, oh, you can go and meet friends in the park, you can go and do this, you can go and do that. And then a few days later, the government turn around and say, no, you can't do that. But
yeah,
the paper
that's the media making stuff up.
And that's it. And then that is feeding into the machine. And that's when people start shouting, well, they said I could do it. Well, we didn't tell you could do it. The paper says go and jump off a bridge. Are you going to go and jump off the bridge? No. And
I have to say, I've turned down the media. I've stopped looking, because it's very frustrating. They like to ask silly questions and try to. They think they've got a crystal ball how it's all going to be.
Yeah. But then, because you've got left-wing papers, right-wing papers, centre papers, so the Conservative government say one thing, so then you get the left-wing paper saying, oh, this, that, and everything else, and then it's like, well, they are the government. That's what, that's their job. You might not agree with it, but you've got to run with it.
And they question the scientists as well, don't they?
Hey, well, sorry, mate, what you got a degree in? What's your master's in? What's your doctorate in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a pandemic expert, and you know what I mean?
And that's it. And that's another frustration that they're saying about how they didn't have this ready, they didn't have that ready. Well, what government would have had that ready? Who was expecting 10,000 respirators? Who was expecting that? Why would they have that stored? Because in 5-6 years' time, that stuff that they've got stored there becomes irrelevant. It becomes obsolete because the technology's moved that far ahead. Why would they spend that money there and then? So
it's very frustrating, and people get angry. And then when lockdown is slightly released, everybody goes mental because they're all, so cooped up. And
then
do you know what I mean?
And then Leicester happens.
Yeah, because
I
people
mean,
are
the
so
situation
frustrated.
in Leicester, I still don't think it's clear how far the boundaries go.
No, no. And you got to think, for me, is just what they've done in Leicester. Like we say, we're not clear on the boundaries, but surely we should know because we're on the border. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what's happening in Leicester could potentially affect us. You know what I mean? I mean, that list that was published the other day, again in the paper, but 32 of the top places in the country, Derbyshire is one of them. Do you know?
East
And
Midlands,
it's like,
particularly, were quite high, weren't they?
yeah. Well, you've got where my brother works. Well, not my brother's main job, but he's had to take on another job because where he works have basically shut down. Then they're not working, so he's gone and got a second job. And there was a place where they put him, where they had a load of agents in from Leicester, and he was like, "I'm not working with them. You do realise what's going on?" And he says, "I'm off home," and they tell him, "You can't go." He says, "Well, they're from Leicester. Leicester's in lockdown. I'm going home." 4 hours later, they shut the whole department.
I mean, it's not just here. I mean, it's happening in Australia. They've shut Melbourne down. They're shut in the north and the south. It's not a border, but it's like an internal sort of thing, isn't it? China, there's all sorts of places where you're just getting surges of it again, and we probably will.
Yeah.
But not, you know, it'll be more controlled because we've got that search thing and other things that will be.
Until a vaccination is out there, you know, a cure, a vaccination, whatever you want to call it, this is life.
Yes.
This is life. That's the factor.
Thing is, they'll never get they'll never get a vaccine because as quick as to get a vaccine, the disease will mutate.
Well, this is the thing. Eventually, it'll just become another strand of the flu.
Yeah.
And that's the way it will look at it. They'll turn around and go, "We've controlled it as much as we can. People have, you know, got the antibodies there and stuff. It will become another strand of the flu." And that's what it will become. I mean, you know, it's not a global killer. But it's been a mess. You know, no country has got things 100% right. And unfortunately, like I say, it's going to be a while before they become some sort of vaccination. Like Carl says, it's never going to be 100%. But for me, it'll just become another strand of the flu, and that's what we've got to ride out.
We've had flu before, didn't we? We've had, was it bird flu? We had that. We had foot and mouth, didn't we?
Yeah.
There were some other ones as well. I remember when my little lad, he was only tiny, and he had to have a vaccination, and the guy was in a full suit, you know, with the everything. I remember that. It must have been about 2. So, you know, and the Spanish flu as well that killed a lot of people a couple of 100 years ago, whenever it was. So, yeah. It's humanity.
I mean, it is. It's a scary thing, and unfortunately, we live in a world where things like this happen, and it will continue to happen. You know, and unfortunately, it's one of them things we're going to have to, you know, do we deal with it now and just ride it out, or is it going to happen? Do we learn from the past, like now, and 10, 20, 30 years time, same thing happens? Will we be here again? Who knows?
I have to say, though, you know, the progress, I think we've talked about this before, and I think it was you, Ryan, that brought it up, that we've progressed so quickly in the last 50 years that actually our science and our tech is pretty impressive to be able to cope with this. It's just actually putting it together.
If you think, right, the biggest advancements for me were made in the Second World War. You know, you look at Germany, they created the jet engine. You know, you look at the way from the Industrial Revolution.
Frank Whittle created the jet engine.
You are sorry?
Frank Whittle created the jet engine.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying, but the way they implemented it into the aircraft and things like that, the jet aircraft and things like that. It was just that. What I'm saying is that sort of time, from then till now, there's been more leaps and bounds in technology than there were, you know, in the last 70 years than there was 200, 300, 400, 500 years prior.
There's been technological leaps, hasn't there?
Yeah, and that's what I'm on about. And the more we develop like that, then we're going to start getting things like this. Because whereas before we'd probably thought, oh, it's just a natural thing that's happened, we look at it now and think, well, hold on, that ain't right. And then we put things into play, and then we can look forward for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And the amount of things that have happened in this short amount of time, this 12, 13 weeks, the leaps, the bounds that are going to be put into place for the next 10, 20 years is just going to be absolutely immense. And that's what that for me, that's what we've got to now focus on. Yes, we've got this negative time, and it's been a crap negative time, but what's it going to do for our next 10, 20, 30 years?
Yeah, we've got the potential, because we've got more things, more tech, more
That's
science. We can look at things quicker and more accurately than we could in Spanish flu times. So there is a big positive. I know it's an awful thing, but actually it's very positive, you know, and it can help with that anxiety, knowing that we can overcome this.
You've got, it's like I say, you can even look at that glass that is full of, well, half full of water, or is it half empty? So do you focus on all that negative stuff because that's all you can see, or do you look above it and look for that space that's hope, that's the future?
Yeah.
And
I mean, do you feel hopeful?
I do going forward. You know, I don't get me wrong, I'm annoyed now the way my industry's been treated, the way things have been handled and stuff. But when you actually think about it, the future, you know, it's like the old advert: the future's bright, the future's orange. Bring back Orange Wednesdays. Bring back Orange Wednesdays. That's what I say. Orange Wednesdays.
What about you, Carl? Do you feel hopeful?
I'm really anxious because, as you are aware, I have started a journey towards. I set out a 2-year journey towards doing an Ironman, and in order to achieve that, I have to do certain things at certain times. So I'm due to do a sprint triathlon in September. They've not postponed the event yet, but it involves swimming. Don't know if swimming pools are going to be open. It's a mass sport, so don't know if they're going to have any people involved in mass sports. Then I've got a marathon in October. Don't know if I'm going to be able to do a marathon. So there's all these things. You think, like, you set yourself a goal. In fact, it was 2 years ago I set myself this goal when I said I was going to do it. And now it's like, through no fault of my own, I might not be able to do it. And I've got to think out of the box. I've got to think, okay, how else could I achieve that?
So
exactly.
For me,
it could be going to an open water, somewhere like Rutland Water, and doing a swim in a lake or reservoir or something, and then do my own bike and ride.
Well,
Marathon could be running the Tissington Trail.
Well, that's it.
But it's not what I intended to do, and I'm anxious getting there. Sorry, Ryan.
Right, but this is what we're saying. It's not that you can't do it, but how do you adapt to it? And Carl, I know him from the conversations that we've had through these, and the way that you were 2 years ago till now. The biggest thing for me, talking about you, does actually show how adaptable you really are. And for me, you don't give yourself the credit you deserve. You're so adaptable, and that, you know, I'm in awe sometimes of you, buddy. You know, the way, like I've said before, the way you go back when we first started this project as more the wellbeing team, more the inspired chat, your words is I don't mind talking, but I'm not into doing the introduction. Now you're doing the introduction and you're recording and you're uploading, and it just goes to show you that you are adaptable, and that when you put your mind to it, you can overcome it.
Yeah.
And that's the message that everybody needs to take away from it. Yes, it's been rubbish. Yes, it's been naff. Yes, it's been this and that and everything else. But as a nation, how adaptable are we? And this is what everybody needs to focus on now, is adapting and overcoming. Moving forward, how do we move forward from it? We don't want to look back. We want to learn from our mistakes, you know, and that's why I'm a big believer that statues should stay up, because, you know, that is our past, that is what's happened, but we move forward from that. And for me, you're the prime example of that, how you can be adaptable and how you can move forward.
Yeah. You have your goal. Just because it doesn't look how you envisaged it in your mind, you can still do it, but in a different way. It's still totally achievable, and it's just changing that perspective. And you will get a moment when you go, do you know what? I could do that instead, or I could do that instead, because that's called a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And a growth mindset will push you forward and make you grow as a person.
I look at myself now and think, who do I want to be 5 years from now, right? And that's what I plan for. And then in 5 years' time, I get to that point and I'm thinking, well, I'm not actually that person. I want to be the person in 5 years' time. And I'm always striving for that 5 years ahead. But along the way, sorry, mate, carry on.
See, I've done that before. I disagree with that, because, and I don't mean to disagree in a negative sense. I was like that. I wanted to be the next XYZ, and the next this, the next that, the next the other, and I wanted to be over there, and I was always pointing over there, looking, where am I going to get to? And I had some counselling, and one day the counsellor said, at what point do you stop and look at where you are now and feel content with what you are now? And since that point, I've stopped wanting, my big thing was wanting to grow the career ladder, climb the career ladder. And I wanted to be CEO at 40 or 50. Now, I couldn't imagine anything worse. It's nowhere near where I want to be. And I'm just happy in my own little bubble. I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I think that you should still look forward, but you just stop and smell the roses for a little bit and then continue. I think that's what the point was.
Yeah. So what I mean by me in 5 years' time, and then 5 years from then, and 5 years from there, as a person, my goal is to always develop myself, is always to become, can I be better than I was yesterday? Do I want to be better than I was yesterday? And if so, how can I do that? Whether that's having a smaller house, a smaller car, whether that's going out to the Alps to work like I've done. And it's not about me having a massive career. It's how can I fulfill my life that will make me feel like I've done what I've wanted, if that makes sense. And I think with this whole COVID-19, it's made a lot of people step back and think, is that actually what I want to do? How can I improve on that? How can I move forward from that? And if your bubble is where you're happy, how can you fill that bubble with things that you want to do? Not about a career of making other people money. I'm not on about that. If I wanted that bubble, what can I do to fulfill my bubble?
Yeah, you embrace what you have now, and then it opens it up to lots of other things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So.
Yeah.
I wasn't telling you you're wrong.
No.
This is a chat. You're allowed to have a different opinion.
This is why the Inspired Chat is brilliant, because we've all got different perspectives. We're all from walks of life that are different, you know, but it works, and it's an amazing thing knowing how you feel and thinking that you're thinking different to me. But does that make my way right, your way? No, it don't. It works for you. And that's the amazing thing.
Yeah, it's really.
And there's nothing wrong with striving to where you'd like to be.
No.
But sometimes it is nice to go, actually, I've got everything I need at the moment, but I can do better.
I want to be me, but how can I fill my life with better things? How can I make my life better for me. I'm not fussed about anybody else. That's my bubble.
Do you know right now, Ryan, this is no word. How could my life be enhanced at the minute? Would be by having you do some work on my legs because they're tight as a banjo.
I'll tell you what, mate. Next time you buy a thumper, let me know, right, and I'll put you in the right direction. No, but seriously, guys, when all this is over, get booked in with me. I'll sort your legs out. I'll even let Carl tell you all about it.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Well,
that sounds excellent.
I think we are about out of time for today. Thanks ever so much, everybody. It's always great. And we'll see you same time next week. Bye.
Bye.